Hello everyone, good evening and a warm welcome to the anniversary edition of Bizknight. I am Akansh, your host for tonight. So this edition is rather a very special one as two of the ThoughtWorks offices, which is ThoughtWorks Chennai and ThoughtWorks Hyderabad, have come together to host this Bizknight. So firstly, kudos to all the organizers. And talking about the anniversary edition this time, I would like to spend a few minutes to just give a brief background about what this Bizknight is all about and how we all started and all. So the idea of Bizknight started in Chennai office. It was conceptualized around 4 years ago as an outcome of a community catch-up that just happened. It was more internal, nothing external at that point of time. And the goal was to have some kind of a platform where we could make a learning very easy and for the people to just collaborate and share their experiences in a simplistic way. That was a very simple goal at that point of time. While most of the material was actually available on the internet, the idea was to create a right forum so that the thoughts could just gather, come in, people can discuss their ideas and their overall techniques that they have worked upon and experiment with. So the idea of introducing things in the format of workshop came into picture, whereby a lot of internal as well as external speakers were also part of those sessions, whereby the idea was to have 1.5 hour sessions, which were co-created, in which the time was spent on creating something, learning out of it, and sharing the knowledge across. And in this place, we've spent around a lot of time and conducted a lot of sessions to be 46 sessions so far. Taking today's into consideration, it's going to be the 47th session from Chennai, where we covered certain topics around software delivery, product thinking, project management, as well as design thinking and storytelling. So as we step into the fourth year of next month, we would like to thank each and everyone. It's because of your support that we are standing here today and conducting our anniversary session. So that's about the background of Bizknight Chennai. Moving on to Hyderabad, the way it started was Bizknight in Hyderabad is relatively young compared to the Bizknight in Chennai, because it was started last year with the hope of building a strong community of product managers, business analysts, project managers, as well as the designers in Hyderabad. So vision was again very simple: create a forum for these people to share, discuss, and practice ideas, and talk about the new frameworks that are coming in and all. And in the past 1 year, we feel we have come a long way. And I've discussed variety of topics, which includes continuous discovery, connected ecosystems, to completely unusual topic, but a very different one from the product standpoint, which is the omni-channel distribution. So that's pretty much about the background of Bizknight and how we all started in Chennai. And this being the 10th edition, which is being hosted by Hyderabad. So that's pretty much about how we all begin and where we stand today. And still there is a long way to go. And I'm pretty sure with your feedback, support, and all your participation, uh, we can evolve even better in the form of Bizknight. So this time we are back with two very interesting topics, which is product thinking paradigm and the design thinking and building user personas. So having said that, I would like to take a minute to talk about the first segment, which is our product thinking paradigm. So we'll spend an hour from now on focusing on what product thinking is all about, and we will bring in a lot of expertise from four different people who have come from a totally different backgrounds in terms of not having any kind of commonality. The only commonality is to inculcate product thinking, even though the roles speak separately, which is, so I would like to introduce Ramani first. So Ramani is a product manager from ThoughtWorks Chennai. So he's worked on several products, primarily focusing on B2C kind of products. And he really likes to spend a lot of time on giving a best customer experience. And he's given a lot of value to ThoughtWorks as well as his previous organizations to bringing in a lot of ideas to the market. And his favorite pastime is to mentor the startup founders. So that's about Ramani. Moving on to our next panelist, which is Tanya. So Tanya is again started off as a developer and is a product enthusiast and a UX practitioner. She's a certified Scrum product owner as well, and comes with a 10 plus years of experience. And a lot of people who know her personally call her as a why person because she's always in search of why. Moving on to the third panelist today, it is Naren. Naren is a lead experience designer from ThoughtWorks Singapore with a 15 plus years of experience. And prior to ThoughtWorks, he was head of product division for a healthcare organization in Singapore again. And his current focus at ThoughtWorks is to bring in AI and ML products into the enterprise world. That's pretty much about Naren. And moving on to Andrea. Andrea is again a product manager from ThoughtWorks Italy with 20 plus years of experience. He spent a lot of time on shipping great software products in different industries. And his focus primarily is to get this mindset of a project out and get the right set of product mindset into people so that we don't focus on output, rather we focus on outcome. So that's the kind of value these people, today's panelists, bring into ThoughtWorks today. So I'm very glad, I'm very happy that we are doing a crossover collaborative session. And recently somebody asked me the definition of globalization. So rather than Googling, I just want them to show this because we have people from different experiences across the world in different locations, and a lot of people joining in from different places, internal to ThoughtWorks as well as external. So kudos to all of you. And I would also like to introduce Kandan and Gautam, who will be the moderators of the panel today. So over to you, people.
Thank you. Thanks for that wonderful introduction, Akanksh. And thank you, Ramani, Tanya, Naren, and Andrea for joining us. I know the time zones are very different, and Naren, I know you're sitting in Singapore. It's almost a little past dinner time. So thank you for the commitment. It means a lot to us. So when we put together this anniversary edition, the first aspect was collaborating between two offices, right? Which was phenomenal. The fact that we started out on a journey 4 years back and then Hyderabad joined hands. It's so inspiring to know that what we can do with just co-creation through community involvement. And we've only received support from the external community, people joining in, the product managers, the developers. We've done sessions on coding, microservices, for all you know. With that, we thought, why not bring together this concept of product thinking? Because, if we look back, the software delivery lifecycle is a very evolved concept, something that we are very familiar with, something that we work through with a lot of ease. We started with waterfall, God knows what sort of transformation it went through. We have our own styles with waterfall delivery model. And then Agile happened. And with the evolution of Agile, I think it's been evolving, and it's a recent phenomenon in the services organization or larger enterprises that are service driven, where they're adopting Agile, and so the delivery life cycle by itself has taken so much of time to evolve. Now, what we are seeing in the recent past is the fact that product thinking seems to be in the front and center of any conversation that we are having. So the moment you put out a meetup invite or you put out a discussion with a product title in it, people are flocking. So we just really thought, okay, what is this product? What is this product management, product thinking, etc.? One simple example that comes to my mind is what is the evolution of product? What is getting qualified as product? And a very small example that came to my mind was, have you ever wondered in your office setup when you have your housekeeping staff coming, uh, they they find ways and means to evolve, with the equipment that they have, they find ways and means to ease their effort. They are the first level of product thinkers, for all you know. So it doesn't need any kind of specialized skills or a degree. That's my reduction of product thinking. But I come from a role of a business analyst. I often work with a lot of delivery aspects. So I was also intrigued to understand what is this product thinking that we are talking about so much. So that's the reason why all of us came together and said, okay, let us understand what this product thinking is, and let us see if this knowledge benefits everybody. And we'll get started. So I think let me start with Naren. So Naren, why do you think the product thinking concept is relevant today, and what is the demand for product thinking in the market?
Sure. Thanks, Kandan, and thanks for the intro, and thanks for the lovely question. So, in my opinion, product thinking was always relevant. It's just that we never called it that way. So, in fact, it was never called anything. It was a way of success, or part of a success formula before. You mentioned about evolution of product. I won't go into details of how the physical products or non-digital products to digital product and all that. But imagine 50, 60 years ago, in pre-digital era, in the manufacturing era, where launching a car model was a big product announcement. Okay, when a particular car model was launched, whether it clicked with the market or not, was product thinking done right or wrong in those times? Now, to understand that this statement, or this example I gave, you probably need to understand what product thinking is and what it isn't. Product thinking is nothing but the journey from the problem space to the solution space. Problem space is where the users are, and the solution space is where the business is. And the entire goal of product thinking is to reduce this gap between users and the business. So from that perspective, product thinking was always relevant to the market, to the business. It's just that we never called it like a term of product thinking and all that. So that is the reason it always stayed in relevant, but it's just a different name. Now, to the question, when you said why is there a sudden surge in the use of product thinking, why there is a demand in the market and all that. I think in my opinion, there are three things that are actually contributing to this particular spike in product thinking, or its growth or popularity. One, the speed with which we can roll out digital products today enable us to fail faster and learn at unprecedented speeds. Two, the clarity that we get from all these past failures, which gives us a very clear picture of what is working, what is not working, what to do about it. And three, the information age we live in makes things travel faster and catch speed for growth. So these three things are coming together and contributing for this product thinking growth and popularity. It's just that we live in such times of information. We live in times of tremendous speed of going to the market. So all these things are enabling us to put a name to this particular methodology and then follow through. So that's what it is.
Cool. Thanks for those insights, Naren. I think that's I think the hype or the aspect that I want to explore a little further is how you explained it, right? That people are now like gravitating towards product thinking. Like all of our conversations are around, can you productize it, etc. So my question to you, Andrea, is like, why do you think, I mean, apart from the reasons that Naren mentioned, that it has always been an existential thing, it's just that we've not coined it. It's something that we've just identified now. Why do you think everybody now wants to gravitate towards product thinking? What in your opinion is that, the reason?
Sure. First of all, thank you everybody also for having me. what I observe in the market is that many existing companies, large companies, see the way of solving problems, the way of building solutions for the market that are no longer effective. Because, as Nareen explained, the time to market is different. The value is changing, the perceived value by the end customer is changing so fast that the way they were used to work is no longer effective. They are losing market share, they have problems in customer satisfaction, and so they really understand that they need to change the approach on the way they build products. So there is, let's say, we goes in the space of tech, but actually the way they understand what is valuable for the end user and how this is connected with their business goals. I think these two elements, better understanding the value for the end user, that with the technology acceleration, with all the changes from social, I mean, we observe an acceleration in this kind of change, and they really need to find new ways of understanding to be able to focus their activities in and do not waste money and time on something else.
Okay, thanks for that, Andrea. So, Ramani, this is something that probably is a very pointed question to you, because you come from the product space, and then you have sort of evolved yourself in the services space as well. And I'm sure you get asked this question many times. So is product thinking a niche skill? Is it something that comes only for a certain set of people? Is it acquired? Is it learned?
Yeah, thank you, Gandhan, for inviting to Bizknight, first of all. And I know it started somewhere in a conference room, and I was part of that discussion, and suddenly we have an anniversary edition. So first of all, very, very happy to be part of this. Coming to our question, yeah, I mean, I started somewhere around 2005, excited about marketing, consumer behavior, wanted to be a brand manager in top watch company in India. That's where the journey started, right? So I was not even aware of what is a digital product management. Coming from that background, then moved to digital era, right? As Naren also mentioned, we call it as an information era. In today's context, this is not a role. That's where at least a lot of people, when they ask, right, this is not a role. This is a mindset. This is a thinking. And if I go much deeper, somewhere I feel it's common sense. But as a saying, this common sense is not so common, right? That's where it boils down. More deeper I go and ask this question, right? Why is it some people able to ask this why 5 times when there are a lot of frameworks available in the market, like we call it 5 whys, there are a lot of canvases available, but still some people do it a little better, whereas these frameworks are available to everyone, and but still some people do not utilize it properly. So maybe these skill sets come naturally to few people, and that's why we call it as the traditional Venn diagram, right? You have this user, business, and tech, and the center we call it as product innovation or the product mindset. In my experience, I would say that of these 3 perspectives, so user is being empathetic in nature. It depends on your family background, the way you were brought up, have this eye for people, and it is more of humanizing. I've seen a lot of excellent product thinkers who anything you talk, they'll first put users on the table. And if you look at their background, it's not only about what you read, it's not about what you study, whether you've done a course, it is about the thinking for other human being. That's very, very important. And over that, yeah, I mean, there is a lot of reading you do, and you do get experienced. The second part is technology. I think most of us will be aware of it. I'm not touching it. And the business acumen is also another aspect. Now, in my experience, I've seen you need to balance these 3 perspectives, and that becomes the niche skill. I've seen a lot of people either be excellent in user experience, excellent in business acumen, or excellent in technology thinking. But balancing these 3, I've seen 1 or 2 people as product leaders have worked with, but even they also struggle when put under a deep pressure. So if you can balance at least 2,
I would call this as a good thing for you as in a career. And yeah, it's surely a niche skill because you have to balance all the three, which is very, very tough for everyone, right? You suddenly become a designer for 10 years and then you want to balance it, it's tough. I've been doing a lot of business work for last 10 years. And if you ask me to think technology, it is tough for me. It doesn't come naturally for me. So I would say that it's a niche skill, but more than niche, you need to balance all this, and on top of it, you need to have the leadership part to have a good career in product management.
Thanks for that. I really like the way you put it, the humanizing part of thinking. I think that's the aspect that is relatable the most, because when you design a physical product, when you actually have something to touch and feel, I think the thought process that goes into it is basically very user-centric. Would they be able to do something with it? Is it productive, etc.? I think taking the same concept, because I think mindset doesn't change. If the user is in the front and center of everything, I think you evolve products that are useful. So that's a takeaway for me. I'm going to use this phrase as much as possible in my future discussions, the humanizing part. While we are at the whole product thinking aspect, there's this one thing that I wanted to check with you, Tanya, about whether product thinking is now being used as a silver bullet for any problem. So let us say you take a maintenance project. Let us do a product thinking on it. Is it considered that way? What is your opinion and viewpoint on this?
Yeah, thanks also for the charming introduction. Yeah, is it a silver bullet? So that's a big question. Like, does it solve all of your problems? That's a big question. So I think the obvious answer is no, but I would say it's a very good starting point to start any kind of endeavor. And building on what Andrea said earlier, we have big companies, the market is changing, so also big companies, and I think that's what we see a lot in the consulting space. They see that the way they treat products, how they do their product development is too slow, or maybe it just creates too much waste and they are getting lost in some way and they don't know actually where the value is, right? So that's what I say product thinking is a good starting point. And building on what Ramani said, that brings you to the point where to the empathy and to the user. So we all know there is this intersection between tech and business and user. So you have to have something that makes sense for the business. Tech is kind of the enabler, but where you would find where this actually what you're doing creates value, that's on the user side, right? And that's where the empathy and looking at what users are doing is very important. And I think that is where it is a very good starting point, and then build from there to develop something and also iterate on it, right? We might be wrong in the beginning. We know what the user wants. We then test what's the right solution, looking a bit into the lean methodology to not create waste, and also to find out what the customer actually wants. And there I would say product thinking is a very good starting point, instead of maybe project thinking. Like that's also like a paradigm, right? What is project, what is product? So I would say product is something where you are focused a lot on, you have one customer, you are focused around timeline and scope and all of these things. But that's just one part of the whole story. The other product thinking, or what's a product, is actually more finding out where is the value, right, for the user. And if we create value for the user, we also, I would say, create value for the business. So that again is the best starting point. Though it might not be a silver bullet, but it maybe might become one if you're doing it right.
Perfect. I think that really gives a lot of perspective to how not to, approach product thinking, or how to actually start putting the right lens on product thinking. Thank you for that. We have a couple of questions. Thanks to Samuel Christopher, who says empathy, that's in some product thinking. I think the humanizing aspect of it settles really well. Thank you, Samuel. The other question is from Nag, where he's asking, what role do you see a product thinker taking up typically in orgs? Is it product owner, product manager, etc.? And how should you get in, how close should they get into the daily execution cycle? I'm not sure if we are going to be answering these questions a little later, but if somebody wants to field that question, we can do that. Yes, Tanya.
Yeah, I'd like to answer this one because and thanks again for the question, because I just wanted to get this out. So I work currently in my current assignment on a very technical project, and I believe that everybody in an organization should apply product thinking. So coming back to is it a niche skill? Probably currently it is, but I think it's the task of all of us to get it out of the niche. And it's also especially maybe a call out to everybody that is a product owner, is a business analyst, to really involve technical roles as well. And if you start doing that, you get all these different ideas, and you really also find, probably you have challenging conversations, challenging questions, but that really helps you to find the right solution. This is sometimes a bit inconvenient because you have a lot of conversations up front, but it's better to have the conversation up front and have different perspective than once you've shipped your product and then find out that you have moved into the right direction. So I try to involve developers early on in any kind, also customer conversations, or also user testing. Just recently, I'm currently developing a portal for a very technical product. And it was really for, if you ask any developer on my team, I looped them in bit by bit into the user testing, and it was really eye-opening for them. And it really changed a lot of conversations. So I really want to encourage you to really involve different kind of roles early on in the design process, right? Or the discovery process, let's put it like that.
Thanks for filling that. I hope now your question's been answered. There's also one other question from Samuel. I'll put it out here. Do you see productizing a business process during project execution? Who wants to take this?
Sorry, the question again?
Sure. Do you see productizing a business process during a project execution? So I'll probably give my interpretation of this, Sam.
Yes,
Do ping if you feel that it's not right, and you can add more details. I think if you're in a project execution lifecycle, have you gotten into a phase where you're productizing a business process as part of a project execution lifecycle? Is that something that people do? I think that's the question.
I think there is some, I actually feel there is some ambiguity around the way productizing, is used in this particular context here. So I would like to, know a little bit more. If the person who posted the question can expand a little bit on that aspect.
Sure. Samuel, if you can post your question, but probably in the interest of time, we'll keep that question in the parking lot for now, and then we'll move on to the next segment, and then we can address that towards the end of the session, if that's okay with everybody.
Yeah.
Cool. Handing over to Gautam now for the questions.
Hello, everyone. First of all, I'd like to thank the panelists for making time to attend and give us their knowledge and gyan, and also the attendees as well. And Kandan gave a very precise and beautiful introduction about product thinking, and he had some very insightful questions as well. So at least I'm right now in a position to understand at least the basics of what product thinking is about. So moving on to a little bit deeper. So Ramani, I understand you have been working in a product kind of organizations, be it tech, a software or a non-software companies. So I wanted to ask you about the history of product thinking and what have been the major milestones or disruptions in this way of thinking. You said it was present over a period of time, and we just gave a name to it, and it is common sense all the way. But have you seen any major disruptions to this way of thinking in the past? And also, where do you see this product thinking is heading towards? With our world is very quickly changing.
Yeah, thanks, Gautam. Yeah, I mean, evolution. I'd say, like, when I was studying business management, right? That time you asked this question. The only line I can draw is brand management, right? And I've seen in business schools, large enterprises, FMCG companies, consumer durable companies used to hire brand managers. Few companies used to call them as product managers also. So from an evolution perspective, as Naren also said, right? I mean, it's like old wine in a new bottle, right? Like it was there. People did not use this term as product thinking. We didn't have digital products because during that time it was physical era, right? And especially FMCG revolution was happening in 70s and 80s. You have these soaps, shampoos, and a lot of other products which is coming into the market. And that's where you need brand managers to come and shape the thinking and how to go to market. So all these concepts today we are seeing, right? Go to market or taking the product as an MVP has been in some form during the industrial revolution itself. And I think after that, when these two gentlemen, right, Bill Gates and Steve Jobs, these folks came into picture. One is enterprise, the other guy is consumer centric, and suddenly Google of the world came. I was saying, if you want to divide this era into two things, right? The digital era. One is this efficiency era. You have these product companies like SAP, Oracle, a lot of ERP is what companies are called as product companies during that time, where the primary goal of all these products is to improve the efficiency of the business. After that, companies like Amazon, Netflix came into picture in maybe early 90s. You would say Netflix is still a digital company now, but if you look back, they are a DVD rental company, right, by nature. So how this is a very classic example how they transformed themselves to be a digital native company, right? And I call this era as a customer obsession era. Rather than looking at efficiency, everything in our thinking is put towards solving customer problems. And that's where, again, go back to what Naren said, right? From a solution space to slowly we started moving towards the problem space. I would still say we are in very early days, but I think next 15, 20 years will be more about problem space because we kind of achieved a balance in the solution space. We know lean, we know agile, a lot of things happened, and obviously we need to now move towards problem space. What are the disruptions, the second part of the question, and where it is heading towards, if you ask me? Take the example of Netflix, right? Today, what is very unique about them? I was looking at one of the movies last week, and the Netflix content curator was saying this movie will be viewed in 195 countries. I was like astonished. If you do a project, launch it in 195 countries, it's going to take some years. Now you launch a content in Netflix, it's simultaneously launching in 195 countries. So that brings scale and faster to market. So these are the few disruptions which is happening in the last 5-6 years. And that's where a lot of VCs investments who are greedy, right? Who wants to achieve the whole globe as market. If Netflix can achieve 195 countries as their market, right? Now look at any categories, obviously they want to achieve that. And that's where a lot of investments get pumped in. And most of these startups who generate these ideas will be more lucrative for the large enterprises. I see, though I'm not a believer in astrology to predict something, but where it will go is what I see is large enterprises already understood that, okay, hey, this is an interesting phenomenon, we need to invest in that. But they're not going to learn this overnight. So they will go and look at smaller startups to acquire. Smaller startups are founders who understand this, build this product companies for selling it to large companies. So a lot of marriages between large companies and smaller companies will happen in the next 5 to 10 years is one prediction I would say. The other thing which I'm thinking is the large company itself very smart. There have been a lot of assignments, a lot of sales pitch which I have been involved in ThoughtWorks. Right? They themselves want to build a product rather than focusing not only to their company, but they're looking at the whole industry such that with these investments, they want to create a category by themselves such that they get revenue from the digital business. So you can see a lot of chief technology officers, chief information officers role moving to chief digital officers because they're seeing digital as a business. Even in ThoughtWorks, we call it as modern digital business, right? So that way it will kind of going in a different direction. And rather than digital is looked as a support function, it's now revenue generating function. That's the major transition going to happen. Whatever maybe, whether you are in a service company or in a product company, one thing is we're in a good time to be in product space. So for the next 10 years, we're all going to have fun. So that's for sure. I don't know where it will go, but whoever is associated here is going to have fun.
Thanks, Ramani. I think I understand you had a very good answer. I think I understand, especially the digital part where Netflix was able to provide a content for, say, a large marketplace. So today, I think, in other words, they are calling it as infinite leverage. So the digital product as, so in the previous, as you said, in an industrial era, you have a product, and only when you produce a product, you can sell it to a customer. But now you build a single product, and it can be infinitely leveraged for, say, take a platform product. Any number of people can join. And yeah, I'm excited to be looking for the future as well. So then, coming back to the questions, so Naren, you have been a designer for quite some time, and I'm sure you would have gathered a lot of insights from the market, be it consumer behavior or requirements to the product, or any kind of information like focus interviews. So this product thinking, how has it helped and how has it fit in your role as a designer? So how does it help?
Okay, so let me reframe, or what I understand from the question. So how did product thinking help me as a designer?
Yeah, in other words, put it very in a simple words. Yeah.
Okay, so let me, sorry, break that bubble a little for you. I became a product thinker after I was a designer. So, it wasn't the other way around where it helped me. So when I started my work life as a designer, trying to design product and make a difference, I felt that, I wasn't doing enough because I was feeling that, the decisions, to take for product to be successful and all that are coming, one level above. So I kept going above, try to become so when I started off a UI designer, then I thought UX is going to make a lot of difference in the way the product is going to cascade and going to go live to the market. So from there I became a UX guy, and from UX it wasn't enough, so I tried to understand technology, because there were a lot of technical constraints coming from the tech side. So I wanted to understand that, and that wasn't enough. Then I went on to become the product guy, and that's where I was able to see the complete picture of how what makes sense for the users, what makes sense for the business. So if you actually use the design thinking lens, right, what is desirable, what is viable, and what is feasible, and that's what you'll be able to see from a product owner, product head, or product manager perspective, and see what works, or what can work, and you make that hypothesis. With that hypothesis you make certain metrics that you classify as a success metric, and then you gather that data and go about tweaking or tuning your particular product. So that was my journey. So if how it helped me become a better designer, probably after becoming or heading product, and and handling a couple of products end to end, launching even wearable in Singapore market. That's where I was able to understand what it really takes to launch mobile apps, to to wearable, to physical products, and how the things are measured, how your metrics completely change, and how you go about understanding the users, how you go about product market fit, basically. So it changes. And then when I started again putting or donning the cap of a designer, solving some problems using design thinking lens, that's when a product owning a product, and that macro lens gave me a lot of clarity in designing certain features. And thinking in product help you not think in features, and thinking in features is will only take you to a certain place. Thinking in product gives you that macro clarity with which you will be able to understand the problem space better, and having an eye on that problem space all the time while you are solutioning is a very, very good trait to have as a designer, or a developer, or or any role you take up in the development side. So that is something which I took away. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, very much. I think from one takeaway I could get was instead of looking at only from a feature point of view, you're also looking at from a consumer problem point of view, because features are only going to take you so much. You are not going to build a feature, or you're not going to put in a feature if it's not going to solve anything. So that I'm
correct. Correct. So sometimes what happens, when you go into this development cycle is that, you become too focused on features, and then, you try to take your eyes off, or forget about, what you're really building. And that's a fallacy that, you continuously fall in. And you will only realize after you launch the product, into the market. And then when you try to, measure, then something doesn't fit, or, you don't get to product market fit. That's when, you start to question. And then, that's when you start to, go back and think. So one of the posts that I actually wrote about product thinking 101, if you just Google, I think it'll be one of the first or second post in the main results, product thinking 101. In that I mentioned about, having product heuristics in place, before you go into really writing your single line of code. How these product heuristics form beacons for you to be able to help you, stay on the course during the entire product development, and not get wavered, with the micro decisions you make, when you focus too much on the features, when you focus too much on the technologies that that you are going to use, and the constraints, that business is going to put, or the technology is going to put. So, so having these heuristics, product heuristics, actually is going to take you a long way. And I personally got benefited a lot when I was heading product, and when having these product heuristics, print out, and keeping on my desk and looking at them, and and making my day-to-day decisions, based on whether I'm getting closer to these goals or not, was an important part of my ritual, I can say. And it really helped me a great deal to not waver during the entire development process, which happens quite a lot that I have seen. Sorry, anything else, Gautam?
Thanks. So moving on.
Sure.
No, that was very well put. I think we are clear. This is your role as well. So I think not only is limited to as a designer, this goes for every other role as well, because we are all building, at the end, building products for the consumers or the user. So I think rather than it say specifically it helps designers, I think it's going to help the role, which in turn makes me think of what motivated people to become a product thinker. Tanya, this question goes for you. So you've been a business analyst, and right now you're a product owner. So what prompted you to make this transition?
I think actually it starts much earlier. I'm not sure if I ever actively decided to become a product thinker. I think I'm a curious person by nature. So as Kandan said in the introduction, I'm always in search of the why. So probably you can see it as some kind of extended childhood, when children always ask, why is this and why is that? So I just keep this kind of questioning my head, because I just want to find out why things work and how do they work. And actually I started more as a UX practitioner. So due to that, I just wanted to find out, why do users not understand? What can we do to make their lives easier, so they can better use products or interfaces. And I think that was in an area where, in a time where UX was not called UX yet, where the term was not coined that way. And then I also started my career working in startups, and there actually is no other way than applying product thinking, because you have to develop ideas and test products or services, whatever you want to do, in a fast way. Otherwise, you're not getting far, you're going to run out of money. And I think this was some kind that stuck in my head. Also now working for bigger clients and helping bigger clients to adopt these kind of product thinking.
Thank you. I think it goes back to a product thinking being a niche skill. I think you had this innate curiosity from your childhood, which I think probably would have motivated you sometime during their career. It's nice to know.
Thanks to my parents for the patience they had. And my team now.
So we have some questions from the attendees. So The first question is a bit long, and I'm going to read it. Let me rephrase it if it's not clear as well. Here it goes. In India, people cannot think about new products or technologies. We see VR, AR, computer, smartphone, or OS, or you name any new product which we see is from out of India, and when we talk about it, talk about something new in India, it is difficult for people to think or develop. R&D is not promoted or encouraged. People laugh at new ideas and thoughts. How can we approach great leaders on investing in new products which the Western world has not thought about? How can we break the mindset and give confidence to develop at initial stages? So in other words, I think there is an innate difficulty in building new products, at least from the Indian context, which the Western world has not faced, because innovation is encouraged and it's rather stifled here. So the question is about how do we overcome, or how do we convince leaders to invest or to provide support for building new products? Is anyone willing to take the question?
I'll take that question. I actually disagree with innovation being stifled here or or anywhere. I don't agree to that particular narration at all. I think what happens is the gap in understanding users actually. So innovation, is where do you actually look for innovation? Innovation is coming from problem space. So if you really truly understand the problem space, that means you are building a solution that actually solves a problem. And when you build a solution that actually solves a real problem, then there is no problem for investors to invest in a particular idea. If you actually solve a particular problem, real world problem, correctly, and you achieve product market fit, that means you basically don't need any investor to invest in your idea. Public can actually, or the users can actually buy it or invest in your idea. So I don't see the uh, shift in innovation is being really promoted in one area or not in one area. It's just that they have a deeper understanding of users and you don't. As simple as that. So you should start looking into the problem space more and try to understand users from all facets of life. And this is where understanding problem space comes into foray. So instead of focusing on the solution, you should start focusing on the problem and try to so problem is singular, solution is multiple. So for a single problem you'll have multiple solutions. So the more you understand about the problem, the easier it is for you to build a solution and then get funding or or get your eyeballs or get your users investing in the whole thing. So that's my perspective and 2 cents on that.
Thank you, Naren. I think, yeah, as you said, Indians are known for their jugaad or I wouldn't say cheap and affordable innovation where we use certain ingenious techniques to overcome problems. And I think you rightly, yeah, Ramani, please go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, I was also a little astonished with this question, right? Because see, the amount of investments coming from the Western world is to India and Southeast Asia. Indonesia by itself is a very large market. China by itself is a large market. You see, all these Western investors are putting their money here. So yeah, I mean, and the person who asked this question, I think it's coming from the background, right? Like, I do a prototype, people are not appreciating it. That's like very hard hitting, right? VR, AR, whatever you do, right? See, the investor is coming from the background. If I put 100 rupees in this or $100 in this, what is that I'll get up? So that we call it as a pitch to the investor, right? So as Naren said, right, what you have is a prototype or a solution in hand. Now, if you can convince your grandmother to invest some $100 in it, what will you do? That articulation is what is missing, which is actually coming in last 5-6 years. I've seen a lot of people understanding the space, which will evolve. So nothing to worry. Even the Prime Minister has a fund for startups to some. So these are good times. So nothing to worry. And so that's why I want to clear saying that it's a great time to be a founder if you have an idea. There are a lot of avenues. So don't get demotivated by it.
Thanks, Ramani. So we'll be continuing with our conversation. Over to you, Kandan.
Thank you, Gautam. So I think this was a good exploration of the product space or the product thinking space, and actually also removing some of these preconceived notions or misconceptions, right? That is stifling of innovation. But I think it also comes from the aspect of trying something and that not succeeding. And I think the larger perspective is, what is my value? What is the outcome that I will see if I have to put money in it? And I think because it's being spoken in the Indian ethos, I think there's a natural tendency to look at value even before putting money on it. And if you place 100 rupees on a particular product, your immediate mentality is, am I getting 120 rupee or 150 rupee value out of the money that I have invested? And I think that naturally gets extended. And if you're not able to articulate value, I think that's where the issue is. There are a lot of questions that have been asked around the implementation space, and which actually brings us to the pivotal aspect of this particular conversation, right? Why it is called as the product thinking paradigm. And a lot of people who've joined here come from traditional services organization or the custom software delivery space, where you're mostly driven with a single focused agenda of solving a particular problem. So how, I mean, one question in particular that was interesting was, striking a balance between flexibility, simplicity, and implementation time and delivery. And product owners in most cases attempt to convince the developer team and the kind of value a particular flexibility gives, but immediately gets a response from the dev on complexity. So I think there's this ongoing battle between how do you conceptualize something and how do you get somebody to build it for you, especially when you're not a developer. I mean, today we are in the era of no code or low code platforms, but still, if you're working with a team and convincing the team on your idea, forget convincing an investor, convincing the team on your idea is the biggest challenge. So the first question around product thinking in a consulting or a services setup primarily is around, and this can be between Andrea and Tanya. Like, how do you see this, the limitations of product thinking in a services space? Are there any that we should be aware of? Any one of you can go first.
I can go first. Okay. So in the consultancy space, I mean, the work that we do with our clients, the way I see product thinking, first of all, is part of a transformation journey. So it's not that we as a consultant comes, bring our tools, our methodology, and we start getting the outcomes that we want to have. We have to look at our role really in a time perspective and really think about that we are triggering a change in the organization. We are different way of thinking, different activities to do, different exploration. We are connecting things that people were not used to connect. We are trying to develop new understanding, for example, about the customers. And there I work with many organizations that are still in 2020, a lot of based on internal assumptions on what end users expect. So first thing is important. Do not expect that you go do your stuff and you get the outcomes. It's really about leading a change. And the key aspect that usually I start from is to first, I mean, really understanding what we're trying to solve and connect dots about initiatives that we want to put in place and why we want to do that from an end user perspective and from a business perspective. And to strictly connect with what you're saying about this conversation between the development team and the product manager, to me is key. Understanding taking short-term initiatives with long-term consequences is a risk. So a key conversation to have is, yes, we can have an implementation that as of now is not addressing a consequence. If it's clear what's the impact on that over time. because we need to move away from the usual product thinking that is, project thinking that is basically thinking to the next deadline, to the next release, and then everything else will come after. And but it's not my business. While if the team is involved in managing the whole product lifecycle, consequences are relevant. And so you can take better decisions if you understand the consequences of your decision, or at least you can increase your awareness. Tanya, I leave it over to you.
Yeah, thanks. So I want to rephrase it a little bit. The question was, what is your limitations? Probably, I would rather call it, what's the challenge? And I heavily agree with what Naren said earlier, that we are very solution focused. Our customers are also solution focused. So they give a consultancy an assignment and they want to see a solution right away. And I think that's where also we as consultants have to be careful that we do not jump into solutioning too early, that we really explore the problem space upfront, which is something that then we also have to sell to the customer, and that is sometimes a bit difficult because they gave us an assignment and they want to see delivery. They want to really see tangible things, some code, some. So we have showcases. They want to see what has the team done, and that is very output focused, right? But what's the outcome? What's the actual value? That's another paradigm, like outcome versus output. Yeah, if I do something so very deliverable focused, and that's where we have to do some advocacy to move towards outcome focused work, which brings us back to what does the customer want? Can we experiment in a lean or not so expensive way and really find out what the customer wants? And I think there we need to do a lot of consulting work in general, and maybe to, how would I say that? Provide small, do really find some small things, some little test experiments you can do without really shipping or developing a lot of software. So finding some smart kind of way to validate a hypothesis, which means you first have to come up with an hypothesis, see what's your assumption, and then find a small experiment and then showcase that to your stakeholders, right? So that's the hypothesis we had. We validated it or we did not validate that. And I think this is something that helps convincing the customer. And that's probably the tricky part, to reserve some time to do little experiments and really validate, so that you make sure that you have not just output, but also an outcome that creates value. Yeah, I think that's like going away from the solution focused to really finding out where the value is. And coming to the question, just a little add on to the question that one of the participants had regarding that, okay, do I have to convince my team, my developers? Again, I would like to encourage you to involve your developers early in discovery, and hopefully then you do not have to convince them. I know there is still this tendency to produce big solutions, but maybe you can reserve some time in a week to really find out experiments and then make it nice and shiny later. That is something that could work. That's something that I could recommend trying out.
Yeah, very good recommendation, Tanya. I think most of us are probably using this concept of product thinking to say, let me try out an idea, rather than using the time or using the space that we have to create smaller hypotheses, just run it and showcase it just as a proof of concept to our customers, just to show that by doing this 1% of small change, this is the sort of outcome. So I think it's sort of a learning platform. So rather than moving completely towards trying to sell your idea, can we conceptualize the idea, showcase something, figure out if we can co-create? I think that's, again, the humanizing aspect of it, of making people understand the value through showcasing value rather than talking about it. That's my takeaway from the inputs that have come through. The next question, again, this is for all four panelists. So it's one of the myths that I had was product thinking is about thinking about a product, thinking from creation of a product. And I know that myth is something that got busted very soon after I came up with that concept and started talking to people, right? So I'm sure in your line of work, you have encountered some really funny anecdotes or certain really preconceived notions that either you have formed in your mind and you have kicked out of your system, or you encounter and you have to deal with it on a daily basis. If there are certain things like that, it will be great if you can share for the benefit of our audience.
Sure. I think I'll start first here, if the other guys don't mind. So one of the most common myths that I come across is the misunderstanding between what product thinking is and what productizing an idea is. So people interchangeably, use these two things. And yeah, so that is one thing, I wanted to, clarify here. If you guys are, thinking about product thinking as productizing an idea, it is completely different. There are two different things that you're talking about here. So let me explain what, so I've been talking about, what product thinking is. It's a journey between your problem space to the solution space and all that. Let me talk about what productizing an idea means. So productizing an idea is the ability to spin a product out of an idea, to solve a problem and generate some revenue in return. Okay. For example, let's say John, okay, is a very is a mathematics teacher or a student, and is really good at explaining math concepts to his friends. Okay. Now they are solving problems literally, so John is actually, solving a problem, literally for a bunch of people who are not able to, understand math concepts, but is he solving problem for anyone and everyone? And is he making some revenue out of it? He has this particular skill of solving a problem, and he has validated that by solving problem for his friends. But is he making any revenue or, whatever? No, he's not, right? Now, how can he productize this particular skill he has, or this idea he has, right? So that is where productizing this particular idea comes in. So imagine John tomorrow builds a website or a mobile app where users can pick a math concept, and it is simplified and explained to them, and users are happy about it because they don't have to search in a ton of places, and John is getting paid for his work, right? Now that is what productizing a particular idea is, and by doing this you are achieving product market fit. Okay, so now let me explain, product thinking, in terms of the same example here, right? So that it is very clear. So John again has this website. He has solved the problem, for a bunch of friends or whoever, and now he thinks that he can do it for a lot of people, and he built this website or a mobile app, where people can pick up a math concept, or it can be simplified or explained. But users are not paying up. Users are not signing up. Now, this is the gap that exists between John's hypothesis that he can create something and what the reality is. I mean, this is what we see in businesses, time and again. They launch something and it doesn't work. It talks about this particular gap from what your hypothesis, your product hypothesis is, and whether it is getting validated in the market or not. Now, this is where product thinking, comes into picture. How John can understand his users, solve a pain for them, understand what is working, what is not working. So it's a journey that he actually takes to a place where he is able to get to product market fit, which means he's able to generate some revenue. Now, this is the key difference between product thinking and productizing an idea. So that is a myth, I generally come across a lot. And there is another thing where people seem to have a lot of confusion between what product thinking is and what design thinking is. And yeah, sometimes they interchangeably use or confusingly use these two terms. And yeah, so product thinking, I've been talking about. Now design thinking is design thinking has been probably defined by IDEO and their founders, I guess. They are the first ones who came up with this design thinking concept. It is ideally a subset of product thinking. If I can actually draw a relationship for you between product thinking and design thinking. And so according to design thinking, it's simply um, a way to separate or convert random ideas into workable ideas, and looking at these various ideas or solution options that you have, and then validating them by using three lenses, which is desirability, viability, and feasibility. And this is design thinking. Now, what is desirability? Desirability is the idea that you actually have. Do really people require it, or does the market need it? Does the market desire it? Viable, by building this particular solution, or but this particular idea, is it viable for you as a business to stay in business? Does it generate enough revenue for you? Does it make sense for you? So that is viability. Feasibility is, do you have technology right now to make this possible? So that is feasibility. So when you look at these three lens, and look at any solution option using these three lens, that's when you will be applying this design thinking process, and then getting to a converged solution list, or whatever. Then you can explore again hypothesis, and then work on your thin slices or MVPs, go into the market, validate quickly, and then come back and scale, or scrap that idea. So yeah, these are the two myths.
Ramani, Tanya, or Andrea, if you have any perspectives to share, it will be great. Otherwise, we can move on to the next question.
One thing shortly I'll call one of the myths is, right, product managers are mini CEOs, right? It's been trending for quite few years. So I also got fascinated by, okay, this is a stepping, I think, for becoming a CEO of the company. So a couple of weeks before, I was having a conversation with an aspiring product manager, maybe in 20s, right? So why do you want to become a product manager? Hey, this is like the stepping stone for a CEO. So everybody wants to take this because there is a thinking that you will directly become a CEO by playing this role, which is the biggest myth. The one thing is, you will always one level down the CEO doing all the job. If you want to take it in a very lighter note, right? At the end of the day, it's a dog's job, right? Like, you have to do, in the initial part of our discussion, we are saying bring those three perspectives, right? Which means it needs user empathy, it needs technology thinking, and it also needs a business acumen. And all this is very rare, and that's why CEO hires us, right? So that I would call is I mean, the potential to become a CEO is very high, because we see a lot of examples like Sundar Pichai, who was a product manager and then become a CEO. It's there, but yeah, I mean, those are outliers. Just by looking at outliers, you cannot believe in that. Is what I would call.
Cool. Maybe in the interest of time, I'll move on to the next question. I think we'll just wanted to understand, like, and Ramani, I think this question is to you. How do you sort of make enterprises believe in product thinking? I think the biggest myth is, when you're in the startup space, I think anything sells. When you're in a boutique space, I think the thinking itself is altered to solve a problem. I think you can co-create. But when you're an evolved enterprise, when you're a huge mammoth-sized company, how do you bring in this concept of product thinking? And why is it relevant for enterprises today?
Yeah, I think we touched upon this a little bit in our conversations. I also more like a startup person, right? Most of the time, 80% or 90% of my career is spent in startups. I work very closely with founders. So if you ask me, still I've not figured out how to convince the enterprise folks. It's really getting tough to understand this space. But with whatever little experience, I'm applying what I learned from startup founders in this space. They get excited when you talk. They say, hey, what you're saying is really awesome, but they don't put the money, right? That's where it becomes a little tricky. And that's where you go deeper and understand what they're thinking. For them, whatever you tell, it should operate at scale. And it's a change for them. For a startup founder or anybody who has an idea, when they start, even if it fails, you close the org and you move on. I mean, you go to another job or you go to another startup idea. So this understanding came to me very recently. We call startup founders have that risk appetite because by nature you are starting something, so obviously you'll have higher risk appetite. Whereas if you are leading a multi-billion-dollar company, by changing a small needle, you will have a revenue effect. You need to address board, you need to address shareholders, a lot of other factors which comes into play. And that's why they're not even moving that small needle. In my younger days, I used to think that these folks are like, why are they not even innovating? Why are they not even thinking like that? But once I started discussing or interacting with these leaders, I understood that even moving a small needle is going to affect billions of their users or revenues. So the awareness is there for sure, at least in the last 5-10 years, because when they had their mindset to approach scope, timelines, and efficiency, they have seen certain returns, but they're not convinced. So the awareness is there to invest more money in this. But what I also figured out by talking to CXO level people, right? They want this thinking in their org rather than outsourcing it to a tech consultant company like what we do from India, right? Which is where the challenge starts. So that's where this role called discovery coach is evolving recently. Even Matty Kag and I attended one of the session 2 months before, where even in Silicon Valley, companies don't want to outsource product thinking to an external consultant. But the question here is, this is what big 4 consulting companies have done, where they own the strategy, right? So I think it's a starting trouble where most of these people, once we do it and execute it and show it, I think we will be able to achieve this. I would say we are still in the process of convincing enterprise folks to invest in this. Some of the signs I say is awareness is there. They want their people to know it. So the starting point is you go act as a coach, influence them, and bring that awareness to investment, and slowly I think we will evolve.
Thanks for that, Raman. Gautam, quickly handing over to you to talk about the tools and techniques.
Thank you, Kandan. So yeah, till now we were looking at mostly from a principles point of view, what product thinking, how does it affect our role. So to go into a little bit deeper, you want to understand. So if a person is new to an organization, or if they are new to product thinking, so what kind of tools or frameworks would help them? So this question goes specifically to Naren, but other panelists can chip in as well, because you obviously would have used a lot of tools and frameworks. So yeah, I think the question is about tools and frameworks which will help in adopting product thinking in our daily roles.
So like I said before, I wrote this very detailed and very long post on Product Thinking 101. Just Google Product Thinking 101 and you'll see one of the first results that I posted on UX Planet blog. In that post, I have described what product thinking is, how to cultivate a habit of product thinking, what kind of tools to use, what can help you in problem space, what can help you in solution space, and all the works. You'll find everything there. Some of the tools that I speak about are interrogative pronouns, mom's test, jobs to be done, various problem solving methods. Instead of starting over from scratch, you can actually stand on the shoulders of the giant, and you use certain methods and techniques, certain templates, hypothesis versus idea, and so much more. You can find all of this there. Just look it up, I guess.
Thanks. I think we'll post the link. Someone has posted the link. So yeah, thanks for.
Yeah, thank you for
we
that.
have a predefined answer for this. So that's going to help. So any other panelist has any?
I can add one thing that actually changed my mind and gave me a great value. That is the lean value tree that we are using here in ThoughtWorks is described in the Edge book, because that tool gives you guidance, gives you a framework to really connect initiatives with the expected business value, the promise of value for the end users with the business goals, and making those connections visible, having rituals that on a regular basis go back and evaluate the progress and the impact that you have. How are you progressing toward your measure of success? So defining measures of success. I found a lot of value because it provides you really a framework for your thinking. Then it's not easy to put in place, but it's really valuable in as a framework for your thinking and to organize people in the way to create in a single view, let's say, a way and a representation of what we want to achieve and how, and what that everybody in the organization can talk about and everybody can understand, from the C-level to product managers to the teams. Create that common ground where meaningful conversation can occur and people can understand each other. And that's really important.
I think for others outside of ThoughtWorks, I think Googling Lean Value Tree would also lead you to ThoughtWorks link where people have written about it more in detail as well. So the principle is to look at maximum outcome out of a lean solution. So moving on, we have all talked about adopting product thinking and its advantages to your role and how it's helping out the users as well as the organizations. But when you people have started adopting product thinking, what challenges did you face? It could be resistance from the top management or any kind of challenges. So what were typically those challenges? So we'll start with Andrea, and if others can chip in, they can also chip in.
Sure. As ThoughtWorks, we are often engaged with our client on the IT side of organizations. And when I started, and often building a product sometimes is seen as just a tech issue, as something that falls into the tech responsibilities. But, and actually it is not, of course. And so what I recommend to not do, mistakes that I did in the past, is to accept this compromise. Actually, a challenge that I experience is when you have on the demand side, on the sales side, nothing is changing. This creates pressures, these different forces in the system that doesn't allow you really to work and to find that value. So it's really about keeping in mind that you need to define a new way to communicate, a new conversation also with the business side, including the sales side, and really looking again from a transformation perspective, thinking that your role goes beyond the delivery. You really have to influence and somehow persuade the people on the business and sales side in understanding why we need something, what are really the opportunities, and then lead a conversation that really stay consistent with your goals and the value that you want to achieve, that you want to deliver for the end user. So do not, one of the greatest failures or room for elements to improve was to recognize, accept, and overcome the limitation, the initial constraint of staying in the IT department.
Thanks, Andrea. Nicely put. I think we have to come out of our role, and you said in a nice way that we have to persuade others as well to adopt this thinking, making sure its benefits are communicated. So we are nearing the end of the session. So I'll give it to Kandan to finish with a couple of questions. Thank you.
Thanks, Gautam. I think it is a really well put together session. I feel very benefited out of this discussion because a lot of my own mental models have been broken in the last 1 hour of discussion, and I'm very, very thankful for that. While we talk about product thinking as the pivotal aspect of what we do today, and Naren, as he put it, how productization and product thinking are two different aspects and cannot be taught together as a single concept. There are obviously a lot of scenarios where this gets applied, the wrong fitment of thought process to the wrong type of problem statement, etc. So in a space that you guys have been exploring, working, trying to understand, we just wanted to understand like some of a lot of this gets spoken about, right? The failure aspect of products or product thinking. What are the most recent failures that you have come across? Like, this was launched, this failed because of such and such a reason, or this was the reason why, this particular idea did not evolve. And I'd like to pose this question starting with Ramani, because again, coming from a product management space and then fitting yourself into a product thinking space, I'm sure you're exposed to a lot more, how do I put it, the anti-patterns that are causing these failures. So if you could brief a little, and then we can go across the panel asking for more information.
Yeah, I mean, in the interest of time, I'll make it short, right? Like, so most of my experience, I worked in 3 early stage startups, 0 to 1 you call, right? I mean, all are failures. So it's like nothing went up. And then I didn't have the appetite to go to the 4th startup and try something. So I think there is a saying, right? Only 5% or 10% of startup ideas get successful, though this percentage is increasing because the thinking is evolving. And that's why what I did in 2008, 2009, if I look at hindsight, some of the product ideas is now getting implemented in a better shape. If I had that thought process and thinking 10 years before, maybe I would have been a better product manager at that time. Most of that is coming from like taking an idea to market faster. That's the only thought I had during those days. But rather than what is the problem the customer is actually trying to solve, and for what the customer will pay. So those are the questions. Is I would say that I was not aware during my early days. Now, after you get matured, let's say in the space for 10, 15 years, and you feel that you do this day in, day out, and have that confidence that, okay, tomorrow when I go and build something, it's going to be successful. So one of my assignments 2-3 years before, I went to solve an adoption problem. So we were building a product where the adoption rate is very, very poor. For me, it was like, by looking at the problem, it was a cakewalk because I've solved adoption problems 3 times, 4 times, have seen success. So I started this journey saying that move this needle, move this needle, move this needle, and we're going to get success, right? Right close to 1 year, 1.5 years, nothing moved. And suddenly you become humble, right? You are always a student, because the same formula, same principles, when you go and apply in a different domain and with a different CEO and with a different set of stakeholders, the game changes. So there is no one formula which you can apply for all products or product arcs. It doesn't work. So that, I would say, one key learning for me as a product manager, right? Every journey or every product you start is new. Your principles can be same, but the context of that particular business or user is very, very critical. Just because I have solved a problem in fintech space or in a real estate space doesn't mean that you can do it in automobile space. So that, I would say, key learning, and that's where understanding your consumers and markets is very, very critical. And I would also urge audience to have this whenever you start. It's a new baby. That is one of my greatest learning in my last 15 years. Be a student, and we are never a master.
Thanks, Ramani. I think it also correlates back to Tanya's point of having a huge sense of curiosity and learning at all points in time. And again, as you rightly put, I think being a student all through your life, from the learning aspect, wanting to know more and more and more, and the more you learn, the more better you become. Does anybody else want to share a perspective on failures, or are we good? There's one more question to close out of the panel discussion. Before I take that question, if anybody else wants to share some failure thoughts, I think that would be great.
What I would like to say is that I actually don't like the word failure. So we have this fail early and often fail fast. I don't know how this is in other cultures, but Germans don't like to do mistakes, so it's really not a good thing. And that's why I also think I would be careful to use this at a client, but you can turn it around and can just say it's a learning, right? Or it's like learning early what works and what doesn't work, which is then good for your also for your return on investment for the customer, because you experiment, you don't ship immediately, but you learn fast, and that is good in the end for the return on investment. So that's something that comes into my mind when I hear product failures. Like I start shivering, and I was like, okay, maybe we can use this in use a different wording, because sometimes I feel this creates also a little bit of fear, or like, what are these consultants doing? And they are spending our money. No, we just want to save you money and find out early and learn early what works and what doesn't work.
Very, very nicely put, Anya. Thank you for that. While we come to closure, I think this is probably what everybody is looking for, right? The what do they call it? The magic scroll, like it's put in Kung Fu Panda. And if each of you had a magic scroll, what do you think will be written on it? One key takeaway per person in relation to product thinking, if you can. Andrea, would you like to start?
Well, let's say I think Ramani highlighted a key element, that you're always a learner in this role, and so this is the key for whoever wants to play this role. And I think this, you should be very, very curious, and also, as Tanya said, and always you should be a proactive learner. So a person that has tools and knowledge that allow them to learn quickly, and so this is the direction. It's not really something, it's not really a way of thinking that is as Ramani said, you never become a master. So this is the mode to think about product thinking. And I think this is the most important thing, being always in this journey of learning and really understanding why you're doing something, and again, in a proactive way. So nobody will tell you why. You need to go and get those information and understand reality.
Thank you, Andrea.
So, yeah, you're talking about key takeaways, right? Yeah. So for me, I think fall in love with the problem, not the solution, is the key highlight. Like I said, problem is singular in nature. For a single problem, there are multiple solutions. So fall in love with the problem to understand it better, so that you can find a better solution. And then, you'll be able to pivot better, if that solution hypothesis doesn't work. So understanding problem is very, very key and extremely important. So yeah, that is one of the mistakes also, that I made as a designer early. I'm a visual person. So, when you look at a solution, so, you get sucked into that, the beauty of the solution and all that, start ignoring the problem. And that kind of, contributed to a lot of, failures and all that. And that is one of my key learning, that focus on the problem and have an eye on the problem all the time. So that's a key takeaway for me.
Awesome. I'm having a lot of really wonderful takeaways from this session. I really like the way you put it as falling in love with the problem to understand the solution. I think most often we solutionize even before understanding the problem, and that's I mean, I can't imagine how much of impact that kind of thinking would create in my normal delivery space. Thanks for that wonderful insight, Naren.
Sure.
Tanya, would you like to share one key takeaway?
I just wanted to remind everyone on stay hungry, stay foolish. And as Ramani said, there's exciting years ahead. So stay hungry, stay foolish, and you can only connect the dots looking backwards.
Wonderful.
So let's move forward.
And Ramani.
Yeah, I mean, I get reminded of Tamil poet, right, Thiruvalluvar, who was able to articulate complex thinking in 2 lines. Always I felt, right, if you can articulate things very simpler, you understood it better. Only when you understood better, you can articulate it simpler. So when I write a 4-page document, and then I cut short to 1-page document, and then I try to cut short it to 2 lines or 3 lines, right, my understanding about that particular subject increases. And I think I would call this as a key takeaway for me, right, and also for the audience. So if you want to be a better product thinker, you will have complex things to consume. But when you go and brief a designer or a technical lead or any firm, even the business folks, you need to articulate it in a much simpler way such that they can consume. And that reminded me of Thiruvalur, the saint, right? The poet also. How, I mean, he's a genius, like how we can do it in 7 words, the life principles. Now, I have a lot of respect for these poets who are able to articulate it very simple, which means see the amount of thought process and complex thinking they would have had in their mind. That I would call as a key take.
Wonderful. Thanks a lot for that. I'm sort of forced to make this analogy. I think there's this movie director. I'm a bit of a movie buff myself. There's this movie director in Tamil with his name is Maniratnam, and I think most of his dialogues are 2-liners, like 2 words or something of that sort. So much so that there's a lot of trolling and mockery around that. But at the end of the day, when people finish watching the film and they come back, they're so easily able to relate to it because of the humanization, because of the kind of conversations, and it's so human-centric. So I really like the way you put it, that you can, it's not about how complex your idea is, but if you're able to communicate that in simple manner that people can understand, I think that is an idea sold. And I think that's what we've been talking across the panel pretty much all through the discussion today. And that's a huge takeaway. So we have a lot of questions. We also have a very interesting segment that's coming up, and Kavita has joined us for running that segment. Because there is a time constraint, if the panelists can actually look at the Q&A section and answer some of those questions, that would be of great help. Naren, we're not going to hold you back. It's already 10 o'clock in Singapore. Thank you very much for staying this late. A special thanks to you considering the time that you're taking away from your day to join us. And thank you, Andrea, thank you, Tanya, and thank you, Ramani, for sharing wonderful insights. And I think whoever has joined today will take away a lot from the session. At least I've become richer by the end of the session with all that you've shared. Thank you one more time, and handing over to Akansh.
Awesome. Very well summarized. Thank you, people. Thank you so much. So Tanya, Andrea, Naren, and Ramani, thank you once again. Really means a lot that you people have come in and bought in the idea, and finally coming from diverse backgrounds as well as different roles, but finally coming down and talking about a similar topic and bringing in your different perspectives on what product thinking is. And the way Kandan and Gautam have run and moderated the panel is also amazing. It was seamless. So thank you so much, people. Now let's move on to the next very interesting segment. So that's going to be about design thinking and building the user personas. So for that, I would like to call upon Kavita, who's a UX designer with ThoughtWorks and has been into the industry for more than 12 plus years. And her experience is completely into building creative spaces, products, and digital applications. And she's also designed some digital applications for consumer as well as enterprise solution. So Kavita, over to you. Would like to hear a lot of insights about design thinking, and really looking forward to make my hands dirty. Over to you, Kavita.
Thank you, Akansh. Thanks for that. I'll probably just quickly share my screen. Right. So what I'm going to do is give you an overview of what design thinking is, what is a user persona, and then at the end of this talk, we are going to have a very short activity where you will end up creating a user persona. So let's get started with what is design thinking. I'm pretty sure you might have already heard about this term design thinking, and it's probably not new to you. It's an approach. It's a very user-centric approach to solve a problem. And when you do that, you have like a very deep empathy for the user. You understand who the user is, and then you try to solve the problem from completely user perspective approach. And what also helps during design thinking is, you bring in different perspectives to solve the problem, because it's not only the designer who's solving the problem, but it's also a whole bunch of other people who are involved in, doing design thinking. And when it's used at its best, it can also lead to innovation, right? Because you are thinking differently, you're opening out different solutions, for example, different perspectives, and that gives you a competitive advantage over your competitors. That brings innovation, and that sort of differentiates you. And this is why we would probably need design thinking, because when you do design thinking, you could end up solving really complex problems in a better way. And as I mentioned earlier, it also brings in, a diverse set of groups of people together to solve the problem, which means you're looking at the problem from different perspectives. And I think you might have already heard that, if you use design thinking, it would definitely reduce your cost and also the risk, because you're always thinking about the user, thinking about what problem you're trying to solve and how it's going to help the user. There is a definite cut in the amount of risk and cost. And in few cases, at an organization level, when you start doing design thinking, it also helps you create products that are disruptive, and also you would probably end up creating innovative products. I like this quote from John Maeda, who's a designer and thinker, and he has actually, I love this book from him called Redesigning Leadership. And he says that design thinking is making organizations think about how to move faster with iterative speed. Right? So I think that sort of summarizes the design thinking. I'll quickly move on to the 5 stages of design thinking. They are, empathize, define, ideate, prototype, and test. I'm going to go really brief here because that's the time I have. Everything for design thinking, the core of design thinking is around the user and the empathy of the user, right? So what you do is when you start doing design thinking, you will put yourself into the shoes of the designer. You start looking at it purely from a user perspective to experience what they go through, right? Their feelings, what is their deep unmet needs, and that gives you some interesting insights about who the users are, what are the problem, what are the needs, and what is it they want to be solved. And with that, what you could do is you would end up redefining the problem statement. So you definitely would have a problem statement when you began. But when you start empathizing and knowing the user more clearly, and with that insight, you create a different point of view. And you could do that by using 3 criteria. One is, who is your user, right? So based on the first step, where you have empathy for the user, you uncover who the user are. You also see what is the deep unmet need, and why is this insightful. And once you know the user, you can define the problem. What you do is you start ideating. So you try to come up with as many ideas as possible. Again, it's not only brainstorming within a close set of people, right? So what you do is you diverge. You bring in different people from different teams. For example, it could be a product owner, the tech team, the business stakeholders, a designer, and all of them in the same room, and you try to come up with as many ideas as possible. 2 things that you need to be cautious of during ideation is to defer judgment, right? So what we want to do is create as many ideas as possible, and then let's not judge any of the ideas. We just need it to be really open, and also reach out for quantities. We need to create many ideas, and co-creating is definitely one of the ways wherein you could do that much easier and create many ideas. And this is the best part for designers, right? So after, say I'm a designer, right? So after I know who the users are, what problem I need to be solving, then you get your hands dirty, start sketching. It could be dirty sketches that you probably see on the right. It could also mean you could create POCs. But how this helps is it helps you learn and solve the problems, and also bring in an alignment within your tech team, your product team, with your stakeholders, and definitely your users. So what you could do is you can go back and change your idea. Probably you could also go back to the step of ideation or even defining the problem when you do prototype. The idea is to do it faster and quicker, to check back on all of these. And after you do that, it's recommended to do testing, right? Test really frequently and with the real users. So the point is, if you're building a product, how quickly can you, showcase it to the user, get some feedbacks. Again, this can be done at a very low cost using just some initial sketches and not really creating, full-fledged products. So the sooner you test, the better feedbacks you will be getting, and the better chances of you really creating a better product. As you notice, design thinking need not be followed linearly. You could do it in jump different phases, right? For example, but definitely you would start with empathizing. So when you empathize, you get to know the user, and then you definitely can define the problem. But from empathize, as soon as you know who the users are, what their goals are, you could also jump to prototyping to see if there is a real need, if there is a problem to be solved. So just feel free to sort of use these 5 blocks in whatever way works for you, but definitely start with the user at the center. Since we're talking about the users, I think user personas are definitely one of the core areas, right? Without understanding who the users are, it becomes really tough to solve a problem for them, right? And what type of solution would that be? Is it a product? Is it a service? Is it a mobile application? Everything depends on who the user persona are. So what is a user persona? They are fictional characters that helps you represent different users. What we ideally do is we come up with a primary user persona and a secondary user persona for any type of solution we create or we build. What it helps you is understand what the users need are, what are the pain points that they have. It helps you uncover and identify the user for whom you're designing. And it also helps you during this ideation phase, which eventually helps you during the design phase. Because when I'm designing, I actually want to know who the user persona are, who are the target users, right? And then for whom are we building this, and how does a user journey look like? So everything sort of revolves around this user persona that we would build. And building user personas also helps to standardize the user profiles and get an alignment with the larger group. For example, they could be marketing, they could be your tech team, right? When you have a user persona, you can always refer back to it when you ideate, when you're looking at a problem and say, hey, this user has this problem, so let's go back to the same persona that we created. It brings in alignment and the discussions are much focused and more fruitful. What I have next are two sample persona. This is a persona that we created for one of the website. And if you notice, a user persona generally has a profile pic, a name, what is the role, and maybe it could also describe saying this person is a disruptor, for example. So it gives you idea about the type of person this user is. You also have a very short bio about the user and a characteristics. For example, your age, maybe country in some places, what is it that they like to do, what is it they don't really like, what are their goals, what are the frustrations and motivations. User personas could also vary based on the solution that you want to come up with. For example, this user persona is slightly different, though you still have the common parameters like your name, profile pic, your demographics, your goals and frustrations. But if you notice, there are different sections called as your favorite books and reading habits. So based on what you want to solve, you can definitely add those components when you create user personas. Now, what we are going to do next is introduce an activity. So the activity is build a persona for someone who's planning to start a small scale home kitchen and needs some support in getting started. So what I have here is a template that you guys could use to start building that persona based on the problem statement that we just saw here. I think Akansh, I don't know if you had pinged it on the chat already.
Yes, Kavita, I just put it in the chat. So
Okay.
people, can you please try to access the link that I put in the chat.
Yeah, so maybe if you guys are able to create a persona, just take a pic of it and send it to the email probably that Akansh has again shared. So that would be really helpful.
Sure.
So we probably have the next 5 to 10 minutes to work on this persona, and if you have any questions, just feel free to ask us. I'll help you get started.
Sorry to interrupt, but a quick question.
Yeah,
Can I
Akansh.
be part of this?
Definitely yes. Why not?
Yeah. All right. So people, can you just send a small indicator like a yes or no if you're able to access this and preserve the PDF which is shared, so that you can as well work with us, make your hands dirty and send across the final version of the persona that you've built over time. Yes, excellent. I think people are able to access
Okay.
it.
Okay. That's good. So what you could do is you can start thinking about image. Always try to have a photo of the person, right? I think you could relate to the user much better if you have a photo of the person. Give them a nice name. So in one of the examples that we saw, right, if you notice there is an adjective, nerdy Nina. So that sort of tells you what type of person Nina is, right? So if you want, you can also try this option. I really love this way of adding an adjective to a user persona. It brings that fun factor to it.
Sure. So in the example that you have just presented, it talks, if I can just reiterate, if you could go back to the slide,
Yes.
it says, it talks about building a persona for someone who's planning to start a small scale home kitchen and needs help in getting started.
Right.
So for me, I'm able to think of a primary persona as a person who's actually working, but is passionate about cooking. Is
right?
it a reasonable assumption to go ahead as a?
Definitely is. Definitely, there's probably a food enthusiast. That could be one of your user persona that you're targeting.
Sure. Let's go back. And I have a sample fictitious character called Steve. I'll just call this person as Steve. And like you rightly mentioned, for the persona template, I'm calling it Steve being a very creative person form of cooking. Can I call him Creative Steve?
Of course, yes, please do that. I think edge to the character, right? When you say creative, you know what that person is, so you could relate to that person much better.
Yeah. I think I'll call it Creative Steve, but I'm not able to see the changes which I'm making. Can you just?
Sorry, I think I'm just in the present mode. I'll just go back.
Okay. Perfect. Now I can.
Okay.
And age, just to give some background about this person, the way I'm seeing it, Steve is somebody who's working in payroll operations in a multinational company and is 32 years old, is a male, and he's a payroll manager. Currently, occupation is working and role is a payroll manager. I'm sorry. And wherever you feel we are going off the tangent, feel free to stop me, Kavita.
Sure, I hope the others are also sort of following this. Please ping as I'm not able to monitor the chat, but maybe one of you can follow.
Yeah. And location is Hyderabad. What else could we do next? Is this sorted? Next, should we be looking at bio?
Yeah, maybe just start describing who this person is, what type of person he is, both professionally as well as personally.
Sure. So about bio, Steve is a 32-year-old person who is currently working as a payroll manager with MNC. Apart from his regular job, certain things which stand out for Steve is that he's interested in cooking. He watches a lot of television shows like Master Chef Australia and all. It's a lot of inspiration for him.
Yeah, maybe
because of which
you could say that.
Okay. Apart from his regular job, his passion lies in cooking and inviting people regularly for lunch/dinner.
Right. So basically, it tells you about how he loves to cook dinner or lunch for people, and he invites his friends over. Right. So that sort of brings him the passion that he has. Right.
Okay.
What you could also do, Akash, is not repeat the same personal information that you have, like saying 32 years old and working as a payroll manager. Maybe we could knock it off and directly jump onto the personality sort of a thing.
Sure. Got it. So it's like repetitive.
Yes,
it is better to be more.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly.
Share. Yes. Okay. Let me go back and let me rephrase it. I'll say Steve is passionate about cooking and quite often he invites people for lunch and dinner.
Yeah, you could also maybe add more descriptions. For example, when you're saying he's very passionate about cooking, there could be one specific area of cooking, right? Maybe he loves to make only desserts, for example. That would give you an edge as to what his specialization lies in within cooking. So you could also do that.
Sure. Multi-cuisine dishes. In his free time, he experiments a lot by trying new dishes. Is this a decent bio, or should something else also?
Yeah, I think this sounds good. What we could also talk about is his characters. For example, is he a outgoing person? Right? Does he love his family? Does he like to spend time with his family, for example, or with the kids? So you could also add that sort of an information.
Okay, should that be part of personality, or
Yes, you could also add it as personality, but anything that doesn't fit in the personality, and if you think it's important, maybe you can add it in the bio.
bio, is it?
Yeah.
Tech savvy, yes, definitely. As he's working in the.
You could also say how tech savvy is it? Is he very comfortable using all types of applications and maybe stuff like Alexa, for example, or is he a moderate
Uses
tech savvy?
any new tech products from the market, like Alexa. Got it. And motivations, yes. Motivations are Master Chef Australia, could be one. The other one is YouTube channels related to cooking. These two are his motivations.
Okay.
And obviously, compliments from people.
Yes, that could also be a good motivation, right? So maybe that's a good cue that the solution that you want to build, make sure that Steve is able to get those compliments, and it's made more visual because that's something that motivates him. So how could we encourage Steve from that perspective?
Sure, got it. And should we move on to goals or the frustrations? What comes first?
You could, I think goals are maybe go to the frustrations because it gives you the pain points or something he's not very happy about.
Sure. Right. So talking about frustration, as Steve is really passionate about cooking.
Yes.
If someone doesn't cook well, he gets frustrated.
Okay, fair enough.
If upon ordering from Swiggy and Zomato, the very first thing he looks for is presentation.
That tells you how probably detail oriented he is, right? So it's not only about cooking a very tasty and yummy dish, it's about how you present, right? I think that's also important.
Correct.
That's a good
So
point.
the other two things which matter to him is how well is the food presentable, right, and how hygienic is the packing.
Right. Okay.
So
you could also probably add points around, because he wants to do cooking. How can he get the raw materials really fresh, fresh from the market? Does he have easy access to those stuffs?
Not really. That's a concern.
Because that's again a frustration for him, right?
That's a very good point. Unavailability of ingredients is what I would want to call. Like, let's say if he wants to make a mutton biryani tomorrow, he wants to have a special kind of a mutton biryani masala that's called Sean. It doesn't. It's not really available in all
in the market. Yes. One is the availability of the ingredients. The other is the freshness of the product that he wants to use in his cooking.
Absolutely, I'll also buy in that, and will be aware. Freshness of the veggies makes complete sense. I think these would be the top frustrations for a passionate chef.
Okay. Now maybe we can move on to the goals.
Okay. I mean, for me, I see my goals on two different fronts. A short-term goal and a long-term goal. What should matter to me when I do this today?
You could also have a short term and long term. That is absolutely fine.
Okay, so short term is during my free time, I want to cook new dishes and sell them. I mean, money is not a criteria for me, but absolutely, I mean, there has to be some motivating factor for me, which could be one thing. Is this short-term goal? Long-term goal would be to quit my job and open a restaurant and a chain of restaurants, maybe.
Yeah, I think that is good to know that, he has this long-term goal, but he probably wants to start small and, check the feasibility of his interest and see if it is actually going to work for him. Though he has this, longer goal of having his own restaurant.
Correct. Got it. Yep. Makes complete sense. I think these were the goals which I was able to think of in the first go. Anything else?
What you could also do is, this is one of the primary persona. Now, going back to the problem statement that we had, right, which is around build a persona for someone who's planning to start a small scale. So this is a persona is very positive, is very creative. As I said, he is a creative Steve, right? He loves cooking, and that is why he wants to use this product or service to create his own kitchen, right? The other persona could also be someone who has to create this to support the family, right? That could be the other persona. So you could see the contrast in the personas. When there is someone who is doing it for a leisure purpose, the way you would build a product is different or a service is different. But someone who is compelled to do something because they have to support the family and money is a factor, then your persona would be a very contrasting persona. Everything would be around money, probably they're earning less, they have a big family to support, they don't have right access to technology, they're probably not even tech savvy to begin with, right? So you could notice the contrast in the personality traits, what the goals are, what are the motivations, and why they want to use this.
Makes
So ideally, after you come up with at least one or two primary personas, it's recommended that you also create a secondary persona that gives you a high level view of where your product should go or where your service or solution should be. Definitely, most of your solution should be around solving the primary user personas that you have just created, right? And then think about how you could also support your secondary persona. In few cases, we also think about the tertiary persona. Now that could be probably your edge cases or someone who is using the service like once a month or so. So you need not really focus from a feature or a product perspective, but it's nice to have in your roadmap.
correct. I mean, the way I'm seeing this is, at least from the way I used to think versus the way I'm looking at things now. The inquisitiveness and the curiosity of solutionizing was more in my mind before, versus when I build something like this, it helps me take a step back, think from a user's perspective on what a primary persona would potentially mean, and help me make a call on, does it really matter in the minimum viable product, or
Right.
is it something that could potentially wait for?
Exactly. So this is how you would tie back what you created in the user persona to the product you're building or to the solution that you're aiming for, and how does this fit into the overall customer journey?
Sure. I think makes complete sense, Kavita. I think gives a better understanding now. Perfect.
And with that, we come to the end of the session. I hope others also had some hands-on on this. Please, share any images that you have, created. I don't know if there are any questions, but thank you. Thanks, Akash.
Thank you so much, Kavita. It was really a very interesting session in terms of keeping it crisp by just looking at the content that you wanted to drive. At the same time, focusing equally on doing a hands-on exercise. I was really excited, and you lived up to the expectations. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Akash. And you played the role of actually building the person. I think that really made it more interactive and maybe gave some ideas to others who are using this for the first time.
Yep, absolutely. Totally agree.
Thank
And
you.
yeah, thank you, people. And are there any other questions for Kavita before we conclude our session for today? Tick, tick one, tick, tick two. Awesome. If there are no other questions, I would like to take a minute to thank our sponsors for the night, ThoughtWorks, and also the organizing committee, which is a crossover of ThoughtWorks Chennai as well as ThoughtWorks Hyderabad, for making the Bizknight successful and seamless. And one last request I have for the participants before we close is, please don't just close the Zoom window before you leave. It just takes less than a minute to fill the feedback form and send it across. So while you close the app, all it will just ask for is just show a small pop-up where you could just fill in your session, how did you like it, and all of that. It just takes less than a minute. So please fill the feedback form so that it will help us accommodate the future sessions better. And once again, thank you so much, people. Thanks for joining the event, and hope you had found the session, panelists, and everything, including the workshop, wonderful, as I did. And thanks once again. It was really a good time hosting this, and I feel really lucky to be part of this anniversary edition for ThoughtWorks Bizknight. Thank you so much, people. Thanks for joining. And as I always say, keep your eyes open. We'll strike back really soon. Good luck. Thanks, people. Good night.
Thank you, Akanksh, for hosting this. I think it was a very effortless 2 hours. So thank you for that.
Thank you. Thanks, people.